Alright, we are day 2 into the bodywork on the Camaro. Still got everything off. I went ahead and took off the passenger side mirrors, so now the car is mirrorless. We have parts here, we got mirrors here. I taped off the glass on it. And today we're just going to be sanding and getting ready to spray some primer on it. So the bumper, probably going to be the easiest, at least in this part, for primer, because it's already has black primer and plastic adhesion to it. So all it needs is a light scuff, and then I can spray some color on it. So I'm gonna not worry about that today. Let's take care of the wing and the mirrors, and hopefully get the rear hatch area done. Okay, so I got my little swivel office chair, put a tarp over it to keep dust off. This is how I'm gonna hold it up so I can sand it. I took off the third brake light. Now I'm just gonna tape the wires in there. That way they don't fall in and it's not a pain to get to. I'll have to figure out something about that. Alright, I taped off all the electrical connectors because right now I'm gonna wash it before I start sanding it, and that way I don't get water inside those connectors. I got the wing on the Camaro's old wheels. Got some soap and water here. Scrub it down. I'm letting this dry off, and I'm going to be using this 7-inch sander with a 150 grit, and that should hopefully take off the tiny little cracks. We'll see if I have to go coarser or if this is too much. We'll see. Got about a quarter of it done. So it's real smooth. I'll have to go over with a finer grip to make it even smoother for the primer. But I am getting rid of all these little cracks and getting down to either that's primer or whatever this material is. Definitely gonna need more of these, but this tool is definitely a lifesaver. Alright, here's the finished product. It's all sanded with the 150 grit with the machine. So now I'm gonna go by hand with 320, go over it all, and try to get the corners, like these areas where I wasn't able to get without getting too trigger happy. This side is done now. I wiped the edges and I did the whole thing with a 320 grit. So now I'm gonna flip it over, and this back side wasn't touched by the other guy. It's all red except for down here. But basically all that's overspray, so I think a 320 should be able to take that all off, and this will go a whole lot smoother than the previous on the top. Also, these areas, this is where it mounts to the trunk area, the hatch, so you're never going to see this, so I don't need to worry about this too much. So I'm going to try to stay away from doing this. Yeah. I like when the paint is good and not chipped up. It doesn't take much time at all to sand off with just a regular sanding block. So now I'm gonna wet this, clean it, and then once it's dry, it's ready for primer on both sides. But I'm gonna start sanding the other stuff while this is drying, and paint will be a different day. Now I'm gonna sand the mirrors. I just wiped them off with soap and water. They're gonna dry, and then I'll be sanding them. This mirror I picked up at a junkyard. Retrospect, I should have picked a better mirror, but it is what it is. I got it. So this has some paint chipping off. I'm gonna try using 180 grit sandpaper, and that should be able to get it down to just this primer or plastic, whatever this thing is. Alright, these 3 things are done being sanded. So with this, I hit it with 80 grit to get off the old chipping green paint, and then I used 180 over that, and then I went into the other areas just to blend it, and I used 320 all over it. So this is good. This one I started with 320, and basically that's all I had to use on this, and I didn't go through the paint to get to primer at all, so this one actually doesn't need primer. So these 2 are ready for primer. This one is ready for paint. That's cool. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm gonna paint the mirrors black on this car. Should look good. So now we're gonna work on the bumper. Might as well do this because the hatch is gonna be the hardest part. I gotta move the car out because I'm not supposed to get dust in here now. Yeah. So this bumper came with instructions on here for painting. And basically, since it's all primed with plastic adhesion and all that, it's ready for paint. All I got to do is clean it with soap and water and then wet sand with 1000 or 1200 grit paper. So I'll be using one of those, and let me pull it out there and we'll get this started. The bumper's all wiped down. Now I really gotta pick what parts I'm gonna paint and what parts are gonna leave this black plastic color, and then I'll scuff it down with 1200. The bumper's all wiped down with 1200 grit, wet sanded. So I got even into here where the turn signals are. I left all this stuff where the headlight is. I left that. I left all of this inside area for the fog light and the license plate. Same thing, turn signal, headlight, all left. Everything else is going to be sprayed white, even down here. And then the back side, I'm not going to worry about this underside because, I mean, no one's going to ever see it. It's 4 hours in, and the bumper is all good. Ready for paint. So we got the bumper ready for paint, the white mirror ready for paint, these two ready for primer. Now we just got to do the hatch. And now the hatch is going to be a problem. It's going to take a while. The same thing with the wing. All this messed up paint, this just needs to be flattened down to the primer or bare, whatever this is, metal, plastic, I don't know. But I'm gonna do that after I take a little lunch break. We are at day 2 of sanding. Yesterday after lunch, fell asleep. It was dark, so we're at day 2. So we just gotta sand this and then we'll be ready to spray some primer. So I'm gonna go ahead and mask off these holes so that water doesn't go through, and then I'm gonna wash it all. Now that it's rinsed, we're gonna wipe it down, dry it off, and then I'm gonna start taping off the edge of the hatch glass, the edges for the fenders, the bumper, taillights, all that, just so I can use just to sand it without scratching the other areas. I started going pretty overboard with the taping, so I was thinking I want to protect from overspray when it's time to paint, so I don't just need to add more tape, then might as well do it now. But then I realized I can just lay down a tarp underneath to cover the whole thing, so that's what I'm going to do, and then you'll see me sanding. I'm going to use my 150 grit and try to get out all these paint cracks, just this area. This area just feels like overspray, so this should come off no problem. I'm mainly worried about this. It's probably going to be difficult, like the wing and those tight areas where I can't fit my sander. I'm gonna have to go by hand, and that's gonna stink. But let's go. So after so much sanding later, I think this is finally ready for some primer. So over where the paint cracks were, I had to go to 80 to get them out, and then that left these scratches, so then I went to 180. I also had a 150, I went 150 then 180, and then I went to 220, did 240 with the machine for this area, and then I did I went 220 by hand again, then to 320 on all of this. So everything right now is to 320 right now. So, and that's enough for primer. I just gotta rinse this off, let it dry, and then things will be ready to be sprayed with primer. But I have 2 coats of primer on the mirror. I just gotta flip it over and do the other side. And I'll do one more little thin coat. And then on the hatch area, I taped up the edge of the glass. So all I gotta do is put some sheet to cover the windshield, and then, not windshield, but the glass, and then it will be ready. The mirror is all done with primer, and I taped up and masked off this whole window to prevent the overspray on there. So everything's good. This is ready. I gotta put the wing out there to spray, and I'll be spraying both of them at the same time. Now everything that was supposed to be sprayed with primer has primer on it. The hatch is all good. I got both sides of this done. And this area we don't worry about because it's going to be hidden. You'll never see it. So I didn't go too crazy about it. Looks good. These Rust-Oleum cans, they have kind of a weird tip and it starts to hurt after a while. So that's whatever. But for here's the mirror. So for a mirror, the wing, and the hatch, I used 1.5 cans of primer. So not too bad. I got just about 3 coats on everything, like 2 mediums and a light. Now I got a wet sand or sand. I haven't figured out if I'm gonna wet sand or just regular sand this stuff, all the stuff I just primed. I gotta do that tomorrow, and then I should be ready to spray some color on the remaining pieces.